Donald Trump made his first public appearance since the assassination attempt against him Monday. That was at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The former president didn't speak during the opening day. He'll be doing that this Thursday when he formally accepts his party's nomination. But Trump did announce his pick for VP Monday via social media. Now that's 39-year-old Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Oliver Ferry takes a closer look.
With his hair bandaged, Donald Trump made a triumphant entrance at the Republican National Convention just 2 days after an attempt on his life. Trump was formally elected the Republican nominee at the convention, having emerged all the stronger after Saturday's assassination attempt. He named his running mate, Ohio Senator and best-selling author J.D. Vance, a man half his age, earlier on Monday. And on stage in Milwaukee, prominent Republicans attributed Trump's survival to a higher power.
2 days ago, evil came for the man we admire and love so much. I thank God that his hand was on President Trump.
Because on Saturday, the devil came to Pennsylvania holding a rifle, but an American lion got back up on his feet and he roared!
Continuing on the religious theme, an actual man of God paid tribute to Trump's rhetorical style, much to the former president's delight.
You're going to be so blessed. You're going to be tired of being blessed. I guarantee it. Believe me.
Trump also listened to a speech by the president of the Teamsters Union, which has traditionally favored the Democrats, a clear sign the Trump campaign is preparing for the heavily blue-collar Midwest battleground states. Donald Trump will formally accept the party's nomination in a primetime address on Thursday, setting up a repeat of the 2020 presidential election on November 5th.
Well, that convention, of course, comes just 2 days after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump at that campaign rally in Pennsylvania. And since then, there have been a lot of questions on just what exactly happened or even how it could have happened, given the Secret Service presence on the ground. We're going to talk more about that now with security specialist Will Geddes, who joins me now. Will, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. It's been 3 days since this attempt took place on Donald Trump's life. What are your thoughts now on what happened? Isn't the U.S. Secret Service known for going above and beyond the call of duty? I mean, what went wrong?
That's a very good question, Jeannie, and it's a question we're still trying to figure out in many regards. In terms of the coverage, in terms of the planning, in terms of the protective detail itself, and that it was not only in the lead up to the assassin or the would-be assassin taking the shots, but also the response afterwards. There are so many questions that the director of the United States Secret Service has yet to answer, and we haven't really seen any kind of formal response from them. But, you know, I've been involved in the personal protection of people in the public eye, former heads of state, various types of high-profile individuals for the last 30 years. And I've never seen anything quite as chaotic and shambolic as we saw on that particular day.
So, Will, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. How do you explain this? How do you explain things like the fact that the shooter was spotted by spectators, he was flagged to security personnel, still he was able to shoot, I mean, let alone even get on that rooftop in the first place? Why was Trump even still on stage for so long once the shots were heard?
Well, I mean, it even goes earlier than that, Jeannie. When we look at the fact that the shooter was actually identified some 26 minutes before they actually took their first shot, as I understand it, Donald Trump hadn't even taken the podium at that stage. So he shouldn't have even been brought up onto the stage until they controlled that situation. But what is so quite astounding about this is the fact that there were counter-sniper teams, there were spotters, there would have been sufficient time in advance. And, you know, I've had to expedite the advanced reconnaissance and planning before a major event, and sometimes only been given a couple of days. But where you identify particular holes, and if the Secret Service come back with an excuse of they didn't have sufficient manpower and were relying on local police department personnel, then yes, you bring those personnel to bear. You put them into those spots, those voids, those black holes, if you like, or black spots where you're believing a potential threat could materialize. Now, the fact that this individual was 150 feet away, or 150 meters, I should say, away from the podium, had a direct line of sight. It's a 20-year-old boy. This was not a military veteran or a former sniper, even for that matter. That was something that was so obvious. And the fact that they missed it, and the fact that the counter-sniper teams wouldn't have required any kind of authority to shoot and neutralize a threat beforehand, one couldn't even put it down to poor communications necessarily.
So what was it? Bad management? I mean, what does it come down to, really?
I think, Jeannie, it comes down to bad management. It comes down to perhaps, and I mean, I know some people within the United States Secret Service, and these guys, as you said in your introduction, they set the bar for being the best there is out there, and almost is a bit of a running joke in the security sector that they are almost overkill in terms of the levels of protection, the levels of security they'll apply to these situations. So all I can really speculate, and it is speculation on my part, until the U.S. Secret Service authorities decide to come forward with a rational explanation, is that you've got individuals that weren't really sufficiently either led, guided, instructed, or experienced.
Will, there are a lot of security experts who have said that some things don't seem to add up. I mean, I've heard you yourself say that on another channel. Do you think there could be any truth to theories that perhaps the Secret Service was not protecting Donald Trump as well as they could have, and if these mistakes were accidental or perhaps even deliberate?
Well, there is still that phantom of complicit behavior, which is hanging over this right now, in the absence of actually having some decent explanations. Now, I would hate to think that was the case. There's only ever been 4 attempted assassinations in the public eye on previous presidents. The last one was Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan in about, I believe, 1981. And the Secret Service in that instance moved incredibly quickly and contained it and ensured that Ronald Reagan was protected. In this instance, I'm sure, Jeannie, you don't have enough time for me to go through all the failings that I identified, certainly from the various footage that I've reviewed. But one of the most important aspects is that as soon as an incident has taken place, you take the target, or the protectee off what we call the X. Now, the concern here is that, yes, he went to the ground. Yes, the Secret Service bundled in on top of him, but he was then allowed to stand up in almost exactly the same spot. And you can never discount that you've only got one threat. There could have been other people in the crowd, other vantage points that had been taken and exploited that could be used, obviously, for an attack on the former president, Donald Trump.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing your security expertise with us. There are still a lot more questions than answers when it comes to what happened last Saturday there in Pennsylvania. But thank you very much for moving the story a bit further along for us. Will Geddes.